Sorry, everyone. Amna seems to be facing some technical difficulties. Good evening and welcome to the second webinar in a series of webcasts that we're conducting for this year's issue of the SZABIST Law Journal. I'm Emil Reza, one of the co-moderators for today's event. We also have Ms. Kakan, our other co-moderator, who will be joining us shortly. The topic for this year's event is evolving modes of dispute resolution, and we have an exciting panel for you today. Before I let them introduce themselves, if you missed the last event, just to give you a sense of how we'll proceed, we'll start things off by getting to know our panelists a little bit, and then dive right into some questions that we gathered just before this live stream. If at any point you feel like you have any questions, feel free to use the comment section down below. We'll have someone collect them, and if we have some time by the end, we'll also have a Q&A session. And so without further ado, let's meet our panelists. Mr. R, why don't you tell us what it is you do, and any past or upcoming projects that would be great to speak on as well.
Thank you so much, Emma. Thank you, Amna. I think I will start off with what I'm doing currently, and then I'm going to link it to what I have been doing in the past. So at the moment, I'm the Dean of International College for Legal Studies, and I'm also the Director of the Alternative Dispute Resolution Center that we have at ICMS. Now, the aim of that center is to make sure that students are trained in ADR, which is my aim, which has been my aim for quite some time now. I've been associated with ADR ODR International for a number of years, and I've had a number of trainings with ADR ODR International, which includes mediation training, arbitration training, negotiation. I consider myself more of a mediator, although I'm a trained digital dispute resolution specialist. I have extensive training in ODR as well, which is the need of the day. And my focus was and is to make sure that the students these days are aware of the scope of ADR, and not only are they aware, that they are also trained. In addition to that, I'm an academic. I have been in the academic field for 16 plus years, and I have been managing previous law schools as well, and now obviously I'm managing my own. And with that, I bring my expertise of LLM in corporate and commercial along with it. So I think that's about it.
Thank you, Mr. Ms. Anwar, we would love to know you better. If you could tell us what your work looks like, anything about your work and your projects, that would be great.
Hello. Am I audible to everyone?
Yes, yes, you are.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much, Amna and Ahmed, for inviting me for this webinar. So starting off with what I currently do. I am currently, not working at the moment. I'm looking for an in-house counsel job. I just recently resigned from Getz Pharma, which was an in-house position. And previously, I've worked in corporate and litigation law firms. And it has been a wonderful experience because, I've got to see all three spectrums of law, be it litigation, corporate, and in-house. And I've also taught at SZABIST, so I've seen the academia side of law as well. So I pretty much have a holistic background of law. At the same time, now I have recently started teaching arbitration over social media. So I have an Instagram account, you can say, and a YouTube channel. So I'm slowly and gradually trying to get hold of people, across the globe as well. So, I can, from my side, teach arbitration and have access to people who would otherwise not be in direct contact with me. And in future, I hope to continue working in house and job which is intellectually challenging, because at the end of the day, I think what drives me is a challenge. And
Thank you, Ms. Anwar. That was great. So I think it would be great if we could start off the main event by sort of delimiting the scope of the topic. So, Ms. Anwar, how exactly would you define arbitration for those people watching who might not know? How would you define arbitration? How do you think it compares with litigation, and any advantages, disadvantages there? That would be great to know.
okay, arbitration is basically a dispute resolution mechanism whereby you appoint a third neutral party for a final and binding decision. That is the most simplistic way of defining arbitration, whereby it's an out of court settlement, which is then obviously something which you need to enforce through court as well. So court involvement is there. But the idea is to appoint one or more neutral third parties to decide the dispute. As far as its comparison with litigation is concerned, there are advantages and disadvantages to both. So, for instance, am I audible? Because I just got a message that I'm not audible.
Ms. Anwar, I think your audio might be lagging a bit.
Sarah can take over, I think.
Yeah. Ms. Sarah, we would love to know what your thoughts are on arbitration or mediation.
So I think I'm not audible. So meanwhile, if
right.
somebody else, Sarah, can intervene and take over.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yep.
So yes, Ahmed, you want me to compare arbitration, mediation, and litigation, essentially, right?
Yes. Yes.
So I think a little bit was heard by Komal, was said by Komal about arbitration, and arbitration essentially comes out of a contract between the parties, where the parties have consented that they're not going to go to the courts, but go to arbitration instead. And arbitration is pretty much settled in Pakistan, so we have mechanisms. कि किस तरीके से arbitration होनी है? What are the rules? What is the arbitrator going to be like? And of course हर चीज़ के advantages भी होती हैं and there are disadvantages as well. Mediation is different from arbitration because arbitration leads to a binding decision. You have chosen that yes, you're not going to the courts, but the decision is nevertheless going to be a binding decision. Mediation is different in this sense that nobody is deciding it for you. You have a neutral third party, it is a facilitator, but they are just helping you facilitate, right? But the decision you're reaching is the decision which is a mutually beneficial decision जो आपने खुद reach किया. Nobody is imposing it on you. Okay, in that sense, no third party is binding you to it, but you yourself are making sure that you are bound by it अपनी मर्जी से, right? So if we look at it in terms of effectiveness or timeliness or use of resources, number one, I feel that timing is very important. When are you supposed to go to litigation? When are you supposed to go to mediation or arbitration? Okay? In countries where this is very much established, you don't just jump to litigation straight away. You try to go to mediation first at a stage where the dispute is not so bad कि आपको इस stage पे जाना पड़ रहा है that there's no solution. litigation is the only solution, you go for mediation. Or if you feel the stage is कि आपको कोई specialized किस्म का commercial issue for instance है, तो आप arbitration की तरफ चले जाओगे, right? And litigation is supposed to be something जो अगर आप नहीं avoid कर सकते करोगे, right? In terms of time, mediation is mostly just a one-day thing, right? So it saves a lot of time. Maximum आपके 2 days हो जाएंगे. Arbitration is supposed to last for months, but litigation, might just last your lifetime, right? So there's a great difference in the time span that we're talking about. Effectiveness, it depends on what you want to achieve out of something, right? So if you want to maintain your relations and you want to make sure that the solution you've reached is something which is going to be most likely acted upon and is beneficial to both parties, I think mediation is the best solution. But then arbitration has its own benefits, right? अगर कोई बहुत ही technical किस्म की चीज है and you feel कि mediation will not suit you, then maybe you should go for arbitration if you have more time as well. Mostly आपके international जो contracts होंगे उसमें आपको arbitration suit करेगी. Litigation should be your last resort, and that should be something that you should think about as well. If you have so much backlog in courts, ठीक है, there are more than, if पाकिस्तान की बात हो रही है, 1.7 million cases pending in Pakistani courts. So why should, if there's such a backlog, that means there was so much that could have gone to mediation maybe or arbitration, और हम उसे courts में लेके जा रहे हैं. So I feel in terms of effectiveness, timeliness, and use of resources, ADR mechanisms are mostly useful. They should be, I think, resorted to.
Thank you, Mr. I think we've lost Abna and Ms. Anwar for now, but that's okay. We'll continue this conversation. So you just mentioned that there are upwards of 1.7 million cases pending in Pakistani courts. Do you think it's evident that ADR or all forms of ADR or some forms of ADR are gaining traction in Pakistan with Islamabad's ADR Act, which appeared in 2017, and Punjab's 2019 Alternative Dispute Resolution Act? Do you think these are effective? What are your thoughts?
So whereas I feel, and it's not just Islamabad Act or Punjab Act, this Khyber Pakhtunkhwa Act in 2020 as well, this Sindh, as well, these acts do exist. But see, the acts alone cannot work. Before the acts even, there has to be awareness about ADR. People need to know that if a court is referring that you should go and make sure mediation होनी चाहिए या कोई और mechanism होना चाहिए, are people aware कि हमने जाना किसके पास है, who are we going to go to, and what is mediation exactly, ठीक है? Are people aware when the court and the court is supposed to, for instance, if the parties are not able to find someone, the courts are supposed to direct you to ADR specialists, accredited ADR specialists. Who are those accredited ADR specialists, right? So आपके पंजाब के 2020 के rules भी हैं, but I feel those rules are very narrow. Those rules recognize different professions. So lawyers recognize हो रहे हैं, doctors recognize हो रहे हैं as ADR specialists, but I feel the ADR specialist himself or herself who has done number of years of training per se is not being recognized, number one. So आपकी accreditation का method, I feel, has to be एक centralized चीज होनी चाहिए जिसके through आपका accreditation का method निकले, number one. दूसरा, unless and until there is awareness, जो कि organizations such as the ADR Initiative and SICA and etc. are trying कि आपकी अवेयरनेस फेज हो, तब तक जब लोगों को पता नहीं होगा इसको यूटिलाइज करना किस तरह है, उस तरह आप यूटिलाइज नहीं करते. येस, इट्स अ स्टेप इन द राइट डायरेक्शन कि आपकी इस तरह अगर एक्ट्स बनते गए, उसमें अमेंडमेंट्स आती रही एंड पीपल हैव बिकम अवेयर ऑफ व्हाट इट इंटेल्स एंड हाउ इट कैन बी यूज्ड. तो येस, डेफिनेटली द बैकलॉग will go away over time, but there's a lot of awareness and there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And if Komal is with us and if she can hear us, maybe she wants to add to it.
Thank you, Mr. Yes, Ms. Anwar, we would love to hear your thoughts on what you think about ADR in Pakistan. Do you think it's gaining more popularity? And your first thoughts.
So as far as arbitration is concerned, can everybody hear me properly now?
Yes, Mr.
So Ahmed, if you can just let me know if you can hear me, so that I can. Okay. So starting off with arbitration. Arbitration is something which is being now accepted by the corporate law firms, council as well. It's gaining traction, and majority of the times, especially when it comes to international arbitration agreements, arbitration is used as a dispute resolution mechanism, mostly because the parties prefer to keep it neutral, confidential, and arbitration is enforceable, and there is flexibility, there is efficiency associated with arbitration. So I would say that as far as arbitration is concerned, it is definitely on the verge of, if not competing with litigation, then at least being recognized in Pakistan.
Thank you, Ms. Anwar. Uh, okay, sorry. Mr. There's always some hesitance when it comes to online things. So we're already in the digital world, but everyone's sort of hesitant when it comes to things like online dispute resolution, and then there are fears of privacy issues. So there might be privacy issues with online dispute resolution. What are your thoughts on online dispute resolution and privacy issues? We'd love to know your thoughts.
Thank you, Ahmed. So, Ahmed, I think essentially we need to first understand where mediation comes from and what mediation itself entails, right? So, mediation jab hoti hai, that results from an agreement between all the parties that there is going to be confidentiality as well. There's a confidentiality agreement that parties, including the mediator, sign. So whether you are in an online dispute resolution situation or in-person dispute resolution हो रहा है, confidentiality is of utmost importance. That is one of the reasons that parties go towards mediation, कि आपकी confidentiality रहेगी, right? So if you don't trust your mediator, or if you don't trust the process itself, तो वो तो आपके online dispute resolution में भी can be an issue, or otherwise in the dispute resolution mechanism it will be an issue. So you have to rely on the confidentiality agreement, number one, that you're signing. Yes, it is online. There can be hesitation because we are not used to, we are more used to it now in the COVID-19 times, but generally people are not that used to resolving disputes online, right? आपके ज़हन में किस किस्म के privacy related issues आ सकते हैं? You might think, oh, what if another person is also watching everything that is going on, right? So that is why the confidentiality agreement is there in the first place, so that there is no breach of it, and if there is a breach, you can take action upon it, right? Number one. Dusra, ODR is not just happened in the air, right? ODR has extensive rules. How are you supposed to behave when online, right? So you have to make sure, and this is one of the roles of the mediator, that you have to make sure that the parties are comfortable and the parties are able to trust you. And how you're going to do that? So if I'm making, for example, I'm just giving an example. So if I'm making notes and I know my parties are looking at it, and I need to make sure they trust me, so I can tell them, if you want, I can tear these notes in the end. And up to इतने platforms हैं which are Zoom पे, there are breakout rooms, right? You can take the parties in private sessions where a caucus is needed, ठीक है? And you make sure that everything that is discussed has the same terms. You tell them before and after, this is all confidential. We are not going to inform the other party about this, right? So then we are taught how to look at body language. आप अपनी बॉडी लैंग्वेज भी दिखा रहे हो, आप दूसरों को की भी नॉर्मल रूल्स जो आपके होते हैं, ठीक है? आपकी what kind of extenders are you using, to make sure you tell the party we are listening to you. You are summarizing everything that the party is saying. That is to make sure the party knows you are listening, you can be trusted. And the other thing is the confidentiality agreement, ठीक है? It is not an automated process कि एक चीज start हो गई है, जिस तरह हम अभी बात करें, we having an interactive conversation. Similarly, उसी तरह आपकी एक conversation होगी interactive in which you are building trust, you are letting the parties vent, and process goes on as normal. And I think COVID-19 has helped in accelerating the process of online dispute resolution.
Thank you, Mr. I think there's still some lag on Miss Anor's end, so until that's fixed, I'm afraid we'll have to just continue this conversation amongst each other. So thank you for that response. But you work a lot on educating and spreading awareness about alternative dispute resolution. What do you think is the public's opinion or attitude towards ADR? Do you think the public is more receptive of ADR than it used to be or not?
So I think when we're talking about public, we have to put arbitration on one side and mediation or negotiation or conciliation on another. Because, like I said before, and Komal also mentioned, arbitration is very much settled in Pakistan now. People are aware of it. It's being used as a common mechanism more than any other mechanism. If you're talking about mediation, the obviously when you it is something new comparatively, you have to understand that it is going to take some time for people to become aware, not just कि जी ये पता चल गया होगा mediation exist करती है, हमने उसको use कब करना है किस stage पे, right? So if you're in a stage where you're just ready to beat each other up, or in that kind of situation, now you're way past probably mediation situation, right? So the thing is, it's not that the public is not receptive, but the public should know, and ये should knowing की concept आपकी एकदम से start नहीं होगी, that you are in your old age, for instance, or और आपको जाके कह रहे हैं कि mediation is the solution. This training needs to start not just in colleges. Training needs to start even when students are younger, kids are younger. हमारा जो whole system, let me tell you, जो हमारा solution का एक system होता है ना, when एक बच्चा है जो लड़ाई होती है and he goes to a teacher and says, okay, I need this problem to be solved. जब problem होगी, he or she will go to the parents. We don't teach चिल्ड्रन नॉर्मली ये प्रॉब्लम आप खुद सॉल्व कर सकते हो, राइट? हमारा फोकस ही नहीं है दैट यू योरसेल्फ कुड रीच अ सोल्यूशन, नंबर वन. दूसरा, हमारी सोल्यूशन हमेशा होती है 2+2=4. हमारी सोल्यूशन और कोई होती ही नहीं है, राइट? सो इज अ वेरी कॉमन एग्जाम्पल जो हम मीडिएशन में यूज करते हैं कि if two kids are fighting over an orange, you are saying, okay, let's half it, give half to one and half to the other. You don't think what is the purpose. Maybe one of them just needs the seeds, the other one just needs to make juice out of it. We don't think of these things, okay? So the problem is receptiveness public ki tab aayegi when the public understands what mediation or negotiation is being used for. उसको जब they understand कि इसको इस तरीके से use कर सकते हैं, it's going to be very beneficial for us. Number one, because of confidentiality. Number two, because of a mutually beneficial solution that we are going to reach. And number three, because of the control that we're going to have in the situation. I feel the public would become more receptive. And we have reached a stage where public is becoming aware. But like I said before, there's a lot more to be done in order to make sure the public becomes more receptive.
Thank you, Mr. Sorry if you can hear the azan. The mosque is pretty close to my place, but we'll just power through. This next question is for both our panelists, and Mr. I will start with you if Ms. Coleman is still experiencing some technical difficulties. But addressing younger minds, particularly students who might be intrigued by this discussion. What do you think, or what would you say a career in mediation or arbitration would entail? What does it look like?
Komal, go ahead if you want to.
I think we still can't get in touch with Ms. Anwar. But Mr. R, the same question for you. What do you think a career in mediation looks like?
So I feel, like I already mentioned, a lot of awareness needs to be raised as far as mediation. If you're asking particularly, because previously you were also asking about arbitration, just mediation is concerned, right? But arbitration, like I told you, उसका तो अब scope है काफी. But mediation का भी over time build हो रहा है, ठीक है? How we need to make sure that this scope is built is by raising awareness through colleges, ठीक है? Our students take part in competitions, ठीक है? International competitions, local competitions, and they are trained so that they know what the scope is. They also get networking done, and they need to make sure they know who the appropriate people are to approach. And जब तक आप ये competitions में part नहीं ले रहे, you are getting connected with the network that is available. You are getting connected with people who are able to advise you about कि आपने आगे क्या करना है. This remains a problem, right? But as our pool of youngsters is getting trained and gets to know, this is the pool which is going to make sure हमारा खुद का scope mediation में बढ़े, right? Not just arbitration. Negotiation again, multinational companies आपके businesses negotiate करते हैं, ठीक है? Why can't other businesses negotiate? ये सिर्फ law की चीज नहीं है. This is for businesses as well. A business will become so much more efficient अगर उसकी अपनी negotiating team होगी. अब हर एक का तो नहीं, पर जिन लोगों के businesses हैं, if they understand the importance, they will realize कि हमारी अपनी negotiating team होगी तो हम कितने पैसे बचा रहे हैं on hiring lawyers, right? So आपकी कोर्ट फीस बच रही है, आपका टाइम बच रहा है जो कि आप कहीं और स्पेंड कर सकते हो और आप सारा टाइम स्पेंड कर रहे हो इन गोइंग टू द कोर्ट्स, राइट? सो आई फील देयर इज अ लॉट ऑफ स्कोप, but the scope can only be recognized when the youngsters are involved at this age. आपकी डिग्री खत्म हो गई, उसके बाद if you're teaching students, or why don't you consider ADR as something, students would think कि अब हम दोबारा से start करेंगे. No, that's not possible, which is why at least at this stage I'm trying to make sure that at undergrad level we expose our students to mediation. But over time my aim is to make sure students are exposed to this even at a much younger age. ठीक है, तो इसमें ना सिर्फ आई नो आई एम डाइग्रेसिंग अ बिट फ्रॉम द टॉपिक, बट ना सिर्फ इसमें यू टॉकिंग अबाउट देयर एम्प्लॉयबिलिटी एंड स्कोप ऑफ क्या कुछ इनको फ्यूचर में करियर वाइज मिल सकता है, बट जो आपकी सारी टीचिंग होती है जिसमें आप मीडिएशन का पढ़ा रहे हो, इट्स गॉट अ लॉट टू डू विद साइकोलॉजी ऑफ कॉन्फ्लिक्ट एज वेल. आपका इस पर भी फोकस किया जाता है, राइट? So at schools, it is in US and other places where mediation, peer mediation की concept होती है. छोटे बच्चों को आप train करते हो to make sure conflict को खुद resolve करते हैं. तो उस तरह के schools में even bullying बहुत minimal हो जाती है, because students learn ये dispute है, हमने इसे इस तरीके से resolve करना है. आपस में जो understanding होगी resolve करने की, वो obviously एक बड़े को वो उस तरह सोचेंगे, समझ ही नहीं आएगी हमारे dispute को resolve कर. So I do know I digressed a bit, but I thought it was a very vital point that people should know about.
That was completely welcome, Mr. R. We have some questions in the comments. One is really interesting. So it says, technology has the ability to improve access to dispute resolution mechanisms, especially in rural areas. How can ODR facilitate access to justice for individuals residing in the outlying areas of the country? So in those rural areas, how do you think ODR helps?
So am I answering this or Komal is answering this?
We'll start with you, Mr.
So you were talking about that there are technical issues. That is why technology could become a problem, and how ODR is going to help in that case. This is the question.
Yes.
So see, wherever there are technical issues, even हमारी अभी conversation हो रही है, we have technical issues, right? But we are making that conversation. We're going ahead with it. Mediation, for example, does not last more than a day. Okay? When we talk about ODR, we are not talk about the traditional ADR has finished. The traditional ADR की तो scope हमेशा रहेगी, number one. Number two, because technology does exist, technology जहाँ use हो सकेगी हम उसको वहीं use करेंगे. We can't use it where it does not even exist. But if you're talking about villages and remote areas, even वहाँ अब तो technology exist करती है. आपकी internet facilities हैं. हर यूजर जो है उसके पास स्मार्टफोन है, एंड दे आर एबल टू टॉक टू ईच अदर. बेशक वो व्हाट्सएप यूज करें, बेशक वो फेसबुक यूज करें, पीपल आर एबल टू, राइट? यू हैव टू डू जस्ट अ लिटिल बिट ट्रेनिंग. जैसे आप, if I am mostly used to, मेरी सारी इंटरेक्शन मोस्टली जूम पे होती है, राइट? टीम्स पे मैंने कर लिया. स्ट्रीमयार्ड पे आई थिंक मैंने 2-3 दफा सिर्फ, आई मस्ट हैव यूज्ड दिस प्लेटफॉर्म. but I'm able to, right? So I'm sure people who are technically a little bit behind, it could take some time, but it's not that difficult. In article, in the situation these days, everyone is used to it, right? But yes, there could be issues where people are simply not able, not because technology का issue, but because they are not comfortable. They don't understand कि हमने online बैठ के इसको dispute को resolve करते कैसे हैं. It's very new to them. In those situations, you have to understand the traditional ADR mechanism exists, and for some people, that will always be the situation, because you will be, even from हमारे लोगों में से कई लोग would be more comfortable in dealing with something face to face rather than online.
Thank you, Mr. I hope Ms. Anwar is back. Ms. Anwar, can you hear us?
Can you hear me now? I've tried all
Yes,
forms
yes,
of
we can hear
technical.
you, Ms. Anwar.
Okay, finally, it seems like an
Okay.
achievement. So I think the bummer is the fact that Wi-Fi connection is horrible in Pakistan. I've tried mobile data, I've tried laptop, I've tried mobile, I've tried all kinds of means of technical platforms, and finally I've been connected. And it's a shame that I've missed more than half of the webinar. But you see, apart from the Wi-Fi connection, most of the arbitrators are retired judges, and those retired judges do not know how to use technology, or they are not receptive to using technology. And that's also a problem as far as SICA is concerned, which is the only arbitration center in Pakistan. There have been zero arbitration sessions that have been conducted through SICA only because nobody is willing to conduct the arbitrations through institutions. They think it's an additional cost. So that's why I would say that until or unless there is this strong technology which is developed in Pakistan, I don't see hope in Pakistan for people to be accustomed to using online modes of arbitration and mediation services.
Thank you, Ms. Anwar. Just building on that, in your 2019 article in the Express Tribune, you mentioned Pakistan, that in Pakistan, arbitration is regarded by many as a first step to litigation instead of a separate dispute resolution mechanism altogether. What do you think can be done to promote arbitration in Pakistan and lessen this dependency on courts? I think we've lost Ms. Anwar again. Mr. R, why don't you give us your thoughts on this?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Although arbitration is more of Komal's field, but your question was essentially that, could you repeat it?
Arbitration is usually regarded as a first step to litigation, not as a separate dispute resolution mechanism altogether. So what do you think can be done to separate the two and lessen the dependency on courts?
I think, Ahmed, there's a lot to do with not just awareness but training as well, right? हमारी awareness ही नहीं है कि कौन सी ADR को किस चीज़ के लिए use करना है. Like I said in the beginning, हर ADR mechanism has its place. I would not say just because I'm saying I'm a proponent of mediation, court litigation की जगह नहीं है, या I would say arbitration की जगह नहीं. Each of these ADR mechanisms have a place, but we still don't understand what the place is, because we are such a litigation focused country. A dispute arises और हमारे ज़हन में आता है इसको कोर्ट पे ले जाओ बस, right? So we end up involving courts. अक्सर courts involve होते हैं, फिर arbitration की तरफ आपको लेके जा रहे हैं, या mediation अगर ले जाएं, which is very बहुत कम उस तरीके से होता है. But the thing is, this reliance, मसला ये कि आपका reliance है ही court system पे. उसके बाद arbitration की तरफ, although yes, we are moving more towards it, and I told it कि arbitration is more settled in Pakistan, but this is all about awareness, number one, and training. Your people need to be trained arbitrators. People are not trained arbitrators, right? आप with all due respect, अगर judges हैं या lawyers हैं जिनकी training नहीं हुई है, with all their knowledge, आपको एक adversarial system की आदत पड़ी हुई है, ठीक है? और आपको एक खास कोर्ट सिस्टम की आदत पड़ी हो, तो आपको उस माइंडसेट से भी तो निकलना है ना। आपने देखना है आर्बिट्रेशन वर्क कैसे करती है, ठीक है। आप उसको प्रेफरेंस जब देने लग जाओगे तो फिर ऑटोमेटिकली पीपल वुड स्टार्ट ट्रीटिंग इट एज अ फर्स्ट स्टेप एज वेल.
Right, that makes complete sense. There's okay, so we have a couple more questions in the comments. Do courts have a role to play in promoting ODR?
Do courts, Komal, do you want to, should I go ahead?
Struggling.
I can hear you. Okay, I'll go ahead.
Sarah can go ahead. Can you hear me?
So, yeah, we can hear you though. We can.
We can hear you, Ms. Omar.
Finally, okay. So, Emma, I have to wait for your question to be heard.
I'm sorry, Ms. Sandra?
I didn't hear your question.
Right. Would you like to address the first question or the one we were just discussing?
Okay, now I can't see both of you. I think Sarah should take over because
I'll go ahead.
I'm facing some seriously technologically challenged situations.
No worries, Ms. Sandra.
Thank you.
Okay, so your question was regarding what role courts can play in,
Right.
awareness of ODR. So the thing is, what roles do they play? It's not about what role do they play. It's about what role they can play, right? आप ODR की बात कर सकते हो, आपका सिस्टम कि जी हमें ऑनलाइन डिस्प्यूट रेजोल्यूशन की तरफ जाना चाहिए, बट लाइक कोमल ऑल्सो मेंशन्ड, हमारे इश्यूज हैं, एक तो टेक्नोलॉजी के इश्यूज हैं, दैट इज वन साइड, दूसरा आप कंफर्टेबल ही नहीं हो टेक्नोलॉजी के साथ तो बसना पड़ता है. बट येस, वी शुड बी गोइंग टूवर्ड्स इट, एंड स्पेशली आपके जी लॉकडाउन हो गया और अब आप कोर्ट्स के पास नहीं जा सक रहे एंड पीपल आर नॉट बीइंग प्रोवाइडेड जस्टिस, दैट इज अ प्रॉब्लम, ठीक है. ODR has gained traction in COVID-19. There is no doubt about it, right? पंजाब में ये चीज कम है, कराची सिंध में दिस इज मोर, मीडिएशन इज मोर रिकग्नाइज्ड एंड मीडिएशन वहाँ ज्यादा होती हैं, ठीक है. सो ऑब्वियसली ODR के वहाँ आई नो मेनी मीडिएटर्स जहाँ ODR के केसेस ऑनलाइन काफी हुए हैं एंड दे हैव बीन डेल्ट विद. सो कोर्ट्स का रोल तो वहां आता है कि कोर्ट आपको डायरेक्ट करे टुवर्ड्स ADR. वंस यू हैव बीन डायरेक्टेड टुवर्ड्स ADR, फिर आप ODR की तरफ जा रहे हैं या फेस टू फेस ट्रेडिशनल ADR की तरफ जा रहे हैं, ये तो एक ऑप्शन आ जाता है या एक सिचुएशन की बात है कि व्हाट डू यू गो टुवर्ड्स. बट कोर्ट विल नॉट से ओके गो टुवर्ड्स ADR, दे विल ओनली से कि वी रेफर यू कि आप पहले ADR के मैकेनिज्म के थ्रू जाएं. सो वेयर द कोर्ट कैन हेल्प अस इज to make sure where they feel it is appropriate, if a case has come to them, and in order to also make sure backlog khatam ho, they refer you towards ADR. और फिर हमारा काम है ADR specialist का कि when they come towards us, we are able to direct them that this can appropriately be done through a ODR or a traditional method, depending on their level of comfort, depending on technology की क्या situation.
Thank you, Mr. There's another question which is more specific. It asks, what path should students take after their LLB degree if they want to pursue a career in mediation or arbitration?
My answer is, why should they wait to complete their LLB degree in order to pursue a path towards mediation? You can, as an undergraduate student, do professional courses. ठीक है, and there's not just one organization. ठीक है, I am linked to ADR ODR International. ठीक है, but there's Chartered Institute of Arbitrators जिससे आप ऑनलाइन कोर्सेज कर सकते हो. There are so many places जहाँ से आप ऑनलाइन कोर्सेज कर सकते हो. Why not start at undergrad level when the opportunity is being provided to you? ठीक है, साया आपके तो ये है कि you can become student members. While you are students, people are not aware of it. आप इंटरनेशनल बार एसोसिएशन है जिसमें यू कैन अप्लाई एंड यू कैन गेट स्कॉलरशिप्स. पीपल आर नॉट अवेयर. यू कैन नॉट जस्ट टेक पार्ट. व्हेन आई वाज टॉकिंग अबाउट ट्रेनिंग, आई वाज टॉकिंग अबाउट टेकिंग पार्ट इन कॉम्पिटिशंस, बट वो मैं सिर्फ प्रेपरेशन वाइज कह रही थी, राइट? बट टू बिकम प्रोफेशनल मीडिएटर्स, योर जर्नी कैन स्टार्ट व्हाइल यू आर एन अंडरग्रेजुएट स्टूडेंट. My undergraduate students, their journey started while they were students. आप अपनी डिग्री भी कर रहे हो लॉ की, LLB की, एंड बिजनेस की, नॉट जस्ट LLB स्टूडेंट्स, आई हैड बिजनेस स्टूडेंट्स जो साथ साथ अपने प्रोफेशनल कोर्सेज, एंड दे टेक लेस टाइम. आपका वीक का एक कोर्स हो गया, आपने इतने आवर्स कंप्लीट कर लिए, 40 आवर्स की ट्रेनिंग हो गई, फिर आप थोड़ी देर बाद अपनी ट्रेनिंग पे बिल्ड करने के लिए यूज डू अनदर कोर्स, राइट, टू मेक श्योर दैट यू थ्रू आउट आपके अंडर ग्रेड डिग्री के जितने भी साल हैं, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, डिपेंडिंग ऑन what kind of degree you're doing, you can throughout that make sure not only have you done all your professional trainings, not only have you done your training so that your skills have been developed, but made sure your network has also developed and your opportunities have also increased.
Thank you, Ms. Sarah. That was pretty informative. I think I'm going to enroll in one of those courses myself as well.
You're more than welcome.
So the topic for this, the theme for this year's issue is the varying nature of law. So just to sort of connect this discussion to that theme, what do you think is the relationship between ADR and the law? Is ADR responsive to law, or does the law respond to ADR? How does ADR develop? What's the organic relationship between the law and ADR? We would love to know your thoughts on that.
It's all interconnected, Ahmed, because ADR is a part of the law, right? ADR तो सारे system में है, but the thing is, I think हमें जो the distinction we have to make is what place does ADR have? Where do you need to use it? Number one. दूसरा, law can be used to promote ADR. Law can be, or legislation can be used in such a way that we make sure ADR has its right place in the society that it is supposed to have, जो इस वक्त नहीं आ रही, ठीक है? And इसमें सिर्फ हमारी लेजिस्लेटर्स का काम नहीं है, हमारे कोर्ट्स का काम नहीं है, हमारी ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस का भी काम है that they are raising awareness, and हमारा भी रोल है that we are making sure youth में awareness हो. But ADR and law are interconnected. If you want your legal system to work effectively, you have to make sure not just कि आप कोर्ट्स इंक्रीज करते रहें, you have to make sure backlog of cases खत्म होगा, and वो backlog तभी खत्म हो सकते हैं जब ADR mechanisms are effectively in place, and those ADR mechanisms can only be effectively in place when you have appropriate legislation which not only encourages ADR but also makes sure that there's a centralized system through which people know आपने किस ADR सेंटर के पास जाना है, ये ADR सेंटर की क्या क्वालिटीज हैं जो हमने देखनी है, इसको एक्रेडिटेशन आप किस चीज को कहते हो, किसी की कितने आवर्स की ट्रेनिंग हुई हो, किसके साथ हुई हो, ये सारी चीजें दोनों फिर एक दूसरे पे डिपेंड करते हैं. सो लॉ को इफेक्टिव होने के लिए ADR चाहिए, और ADR को इफेक्टिव होने के लिए लेजिस्लेशन चाहिए विच इज मेकिंग श्योर दैट इट इज encouraged.
Thank you, Ms. Sarah. So there's another question on the pandemic and ODR. So it says, were remote ODR methods used during the pandemic, and did the pandemic boost these online mechanisms? And do you think these effects will last even after the pandemic passes?
Yeah, I think we've covered this a bit. Of course, the pandemic has affected all of us. I mean, हमारी even classroom teachings हमारी affect हुई हैं, ठीक है? Everything we weren't even prepared. So कि जी एक हमने एक system prepare करना है, the system needs to be there before we jump into it. We kind of were thrown into it and we had to cope with it. But during this time, people had time to establish rules. ODR में किस तरह आपने मतलब जैसे क्लासरूम टीचिंग में किस तरह के रूल्स होने चाहिए, डेकोरम क्या होना चाहिए. Similarly, ये भी चीजें हमें साथ साथ we pushed into it, then we had to build on it. It would have been nice if these rules, like some countries already had these rules in place, if we had these rules already in place. But yes, definitely the pandemic helped, and yes, ODR की ग्रोथ हुई है इन द टाइम ऑफ दिस. हमारे पाकिस्तान में नहीं है ये इतना ज्यादा. आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट जनरली इन ऑल ओवर द वर्ल्ड, ठीक है? पाकिस्तान में भी हुई है, कराची की अगर आप एग्जांपल लें, हुई है. उतनी नहीं हो शायद जो जितने दूसरी जगह पे हुई, बट दोज हु आर वर्किंग, दोज हु आर मीडिएटर्स, दे हैव सीन अ राइज, ठीक है? Whether it will last after the pandemic, yes it will, ठीक है? Some things when you realize उसकी utility क्या है, how well it can be used, and because yes we were pushed into it but now we understand its importance, the system, and I feel it's not just about ODR, this हमारी academic teaching हो, कोई भी system, the system now that it has become used to and become exposed to, you can say, this online teaching or professional working system, ये रहेगा. हाँ, ये इस तरह नहीं होगा कि just completely become ODR now, ADR की जगह नहीं रह गई traditional methods की. that is not going to be it. We are going to move back, and we are actually going to be happy that we have moved back to our traditional actual meeting in person methods as well. But ODR will have more place now than it used to have before.
Thank you, Mr. I think we are out of questions, and Ms. Coleman's been facing a lot of technical issues, so she requested that we end this webinar. Amna seems to be facing a lot of issues as well. Thank you so much for just carrying this webinar through. You've been a
No,
great
not at all.
guest, and you answered all our questions. This is, with all the technical issues, this has almost become a commentary on ODR itself.
Not at all.
But
thank you so much for calling me over, and I'm honestly really impressed by your involvement, and I feel more of our students need to be involved at this level, and they need to be in it. Not just, I've seen places where moderators are professionals sitting there. You might be professional at what you do, but you are student professionals, right? So I think this is a very good step that you guys have taken, and I think you continue with it. You do a splendid job of it, and I think we need more of it. And thank you so much. I think it has been wonderful.
Thank you so much, Mr. R. This has been great. I think Amna can end the live now. I'll just confirm.